Hey there, here with my 91 Miata. I'm about to do a little project here in the garage, one of my many winter projects. So, last thing I did here is I took out the factory head unit. The old radio didn't work. I actually liked the way the head unit looked, but I want some functionality there, so picked up an Alpine from Crutchfield, and this came with the Metra install kit, like they usually do. I was not too happy with this Metra install kit. This kit's meant for multiple cars, multiple Mazdas, and was not a very good fit for my Miata. Had to bend and force some plastic just to get it in, and it's not even in there all the way. And this affects all of the panels from the tombstone down to the center console. So I actually came up with a different solution, and here that is. Alright, so I found this company called DDMWorks, and they make a Miata install kit specifically for the Miata, unlike the Metra kits. So what we have here is a solid piece of bent steel, and this feels pretty scratch resistant, feels pretty high quality, but I will say that you kind of get what you pay for. This was kind of expensive for an install kit, especially. This was $70. You don't see a whole lot of install kits made of solid steel, so that's a pretty good sign. But yeah, with shipping, the $20 shipping, I did pay $90 to get this thing. And seeing as how my Alpine was about $90, this did pretty much double the cost of having my aftermarket stereo put in. But here it is. So as you can see, you can get optional gauge cutouts for this install kit. I don't plan on putting gauges in mine, so I have the blank bottom here. Focus. Another thing you can do is you can get it reversed so your gauges are on the top and your head unit's on the bottom. But I'm just going with the standard unit here. While I have this out, I'm going to do a couple other things. Got RCAs I'm going to run because I'm going to set up an amp a little bit later. So that's going to be for a subwoofer. So these are Stinger RCAs. It's about a 17 or 18 foot RCA run. Can't remember the exact model number of these RCAs, but they were about 30 bucks for the set. And of course, you got to do your remote wire. So I've just got a single strand of copper speaker wire here that I'm going to run. While I have the center console off, I've got a new shift boot. So my old one is the original for the car, and it has some breaks and cracks in the old leather. So I've got a brand new one. Got this one on Amazon. It's about 25 bucks. And underneath that, I've already replaced the top shift boot insulator, but I have not replaced the bottom shift boot insulator. This one goes right on the shift turret, so I'm going to try to get this one in here as well. This is the genuine Mazda part. Alright, so I've got a couple things I'm going to do, and I will try to get some video of the whole process. Okay, so taking out the radio is actually pretty straightforward in a Miata versus a lot of newer cars. First step here is to take the center console off. So this whole plastic centerpiece has to come off. And the first thing you need to do is unscrew your shift knob counterclockwise. It just screws right off. Then you got to take out some screws, and these are just Phillips head screws. You've got two right here in the cubby. You've got one right here under your drink holder / ashtray. Then you've got one on each side of the shifter. So take those screws out and your center console will lift off. Okay, so the next step is to remove the tombstone, the bezel. And the first step in removing this is to take out the two vents. A lot of people like to use a shoelace or a piece of string. I actually like to use a piece of wire. So I have an old piece of wire right here. I find that wire works well because you can bend it in sort of a hook shape and it'll maintain that shape so you can pull the other end back out of the vent. Alright, so I'm going to try to do this right now. Alright, there we go. So grasp both ends of that, and you're just gonna pull it straight out. There you go. Repeat for the other vent. Alright, so you got the vents out. The next step is to unscrew the 3 screws that are holding the tombstone in place. Reason why you have to take these vents out is because 2 of those screws are right under here. If you have never taken this off before, if this is the original placement with the original radio, these 2 screws are going to be pretty tight. So get some elbow grease, maybe get some spray for those screws to let those soak before, if you're having trouble getting them out. You don't want to strip those screws because that's going to make things a lot more difficult. Of course, if that's been done before, if you have already had it installed, they're probably going to be loosened up a bit. But in my experience, with the original install, with the original radio, those screws were pretty tight, and I needed to try a few different screwdrivers to break those free. Alright, I'm going to try to do this one-handed without dropping the screw into the vent. There we go. There's one of them. It's kind of a strange angle with these screws. That's going to help you a lot if you actually get a flashlight. Have a look at the angle of those screws so you can line up your screwdriver properly. Almost got it. There we go. Second one. The third one is down here at the bottom on the left side. Right about here. Okay, so after you take out those 3 screws, you're just going to pull on your panel until you pop it out from the dash. But don't pull it out too far just yet, because there is a wire harness right back here that you need to release before you can remove it and take it off. Okay, so you're actually going to find the tab for this wire harness on the left side, on the driver's side of the car. So that's where you'll kind of be feeling for it a little bit blindly back there. It's going to be on this side. Just pinch it, and it'll pull right out. Okay, so what we're looking at here is an aftermarket stereo installed with the Metra kit. And this is actually going to be the same process with the factory stereo. They have the same mounting points. And all it is are 4 Phillips head screws, 2 on each side, top and bottom. Take those out, pull it out, and release your wiring harness. Okay, so I've taken the Alpine out of the Metra install kit, and I wanted to take a moment to show both install kits side by side, do kind of a side-by-side comparison here. The DDM steel install kit is deeper on the top where the actual stereo sleeve is. Let's see a side view. The lower section, where on the Metra it's designed to have a pocket, this is actually probably going to help the DDM install all the way, unlike the Metra here. I think that some shaving was required down here on the Metra. So I could get the top screw holes in, but the bottoms, there is probably maybe a centimeter of clearance. They would not go in all the way on the bottom. Okay, so here is the Alpine installed in the DDM kit. Alright, so now a couple of notes about getting your head unit into this kit, it's a very precise fit. You actually need to take off your part of the cage, the sleeve thing off of your head unit to fit that in, and you'll want to slide this in from the back, okay, and that will line up precisely with the cutout. And if you have any sort of plastic bezel that comes with your head unit, usually these are optional depending on the kind of install. I don't believe you are able to use that with this install kit. Just to show you how tight of a fit that is, here you can see there's absolutely no space for any sort of bezel or surround that comes with your head unit. So you have to take all that stuff off and leave it off, slide in from the back, and then that's going to sit almost flush with the install kit. Okay, as I wire everything back up here, I wanted to make a note about running cables. So I'm about to run the RCAs and the remote turn-on lead for the amplifier, and wanted to make a note. There's actually a little hole right here to run cables through this dash piece, and on my Miata it has a harness that comes through that hole right here to plug in to the light to light up the ashtray. That's something I don't use on mine, but it's there. And so that hole's right here. I'm actually going to run my RCAs right through here to follow along the existing path of wiring, a factory wiring for the car. So that's where I'm going to run my wires, through this hole right here and throughout the center console. Okay, so I have this thing put back in. The wiring is all in place. I have not screwed it down just yet because I wanted to point out one little thing here. The screw holes on the steel mounting tabs for this DDM install kit line up absolutely perfectly. The Metra did not. It even has, on this little plastic nub right here below the screw hole, there is even a cutout, so this lines up perfectly. Just to show you the level of precision here with the design of this kit, it's not screwed in yet. It is just sitting there in place, and it's a perfect fit. Okay, so everything is screwed back in here. Now with any radio install, with an aftermarket install, I recommend before the dash pieces are put back together, just do a quick test, make sure all of your wiring is good before you reassemble everything. Alright, so I'm actually going to turn on the ignition right now and check that out. Alright, we're good. Okay, so now that the radio is done, and I am really happy with that, by the way, the next part of my project will be replacing the lower shift insulator boot. And I'll do that. First you have to take off the upper shift insulator, and the first step in doing that, after, of course, your center console and shift knob are taken off, you have 4 10mm bolts. There's 2 up here, 2 down here. There is a little wiring harness that's attached to this steel strap, and they use those 2 bolts to hold that in place. Relatively easy to take apart, and this is going to slide right off. It's a little piece of foam right here that my car came with, and I put it back when I replaced this boot. So I'll just leave it on there. I've noticed a lot of other cars don't have that though, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll get to the next part. So with the upper insulator boot off, now you're looking at the lower insulator. And what do we know? We got 3 more 10mm bolts. So with those 3 bolts taken out, you're just going to lift your shifter straight up. And the whole thing's just going to pull out. Pay attention if you have any broken pieces of rubber around where your shift boot seals up. You don't want those pieces to fall into your gearbox. Alright, so here is the lower shift boot insulator. As you can see, this is why I'm replacing it. This might even be the original one that came with the car. And here's the new one. I love new car parts. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is take a box cutter blade, cut off this rubber, slide that off. This is not a complete shifter rebuild. I already replaced this bushing. I'm not replacing a few of these other pieces. I'm just doing a few things here. Who knows, maybe on a rainy day I'll do the rest. And here is the lower shift boot insulator in place. I took out some of that old gear oil, you know, that black nasty stuff that's in there, and topped it off with some fresh. And there we are, cleaned it up a little bit, and I'm pretty pleased with how this is going so far. I'm about to put the top shift boot insulator on and put everything back together. Well, I'm getting everything buttoned back up together here. I really like the way this looks overall so far. I've got the top shift boot insulator back on. I'm actually going to run some of these cables while the center console is off before I put all that back together. But I did want to show the finished result with the head unit, the DDMWorks or DDMWorks install kit. I really like the way it looks. It was a perfect fit and finish. About to pop the other vent in here. It does have a couple of tabs that line up horizontally. I wanted to show that before I wrap this video up. But everything is looking pretty good, and I'm gonna go ahead and end this video, and maybe I'll do one more clip once I get everything all done.